35mm f1.8 anamorphic lens for under 800 bucks? How good could it be? What's up guys, Sagi here and welcome to another Tech Gear Talk. Today we're going to take a look at a lens that I've been super excited to play with. This is the Sirui 35mm f1.8 Anamorphic 1.33x, and I don't know about any other lens on the market that could do what this lens can for the price. So let's talk about the lens. We'll go over what anamorphic means for those of you who are not sure. We'll take a look at some sample footage and we'll see if this is a lens that you should add to your kit. To start out with, let's talk about what anamorphic means, and I do have timestamps in the description to help you easily navigate the video. Now, as a disclaimer, Sirui did send me this lens to test out, but they're not paying me for this review and they will not get to review or approve this video before it's published. An anamorphic lens squeezes the horizontal field of view so that we can capture a wider shot with the same size sensor. And these lenses are instantly recognizable because of their square front and ovular shape. The squeezing of the horizontal field of view allows us to stretch it back out in post and then get a more cinematic aspect ratio. So instead of 16:9, which is what we're getting with spherical lenses, we're getting a 2.4:1 aspect ratio. And the term that you'll hear used for this process is de-squeezing. Now in this case, 1.33x, which is in the name of the lens, is the amount by which you'll need to de-squeeze the footage to get it to the proper aspect ratio. And we're getting the same height that we would from a traditional spherical lens, but we're gaining width. In this video, you will see black bars at the top and the bottom when I show footage from this lens. But if this was a real project, I would simply change the sequence settings so that they match the footage. Now back to this specific lens. It's a 35mm lens and it's designed for an APS-C sensor. Now the lens itself actually comes in a micro four thirds mount, but Sirui offers optional mounts for Sony E, Canon EF-M, and Nikon Z. And I'm actually super excited to play around with this lens on some of my EF-M lenses like the M50 and the M6 Mark II. And this actually adds a ton of versatility to the lens. So for example, if I want to use it on my A6400 or A7 III or A7S III, I can just connect the Sony E mount to it. Then if I want to get some footage from my M6 Mark II or M50, I can remove that mount, add the EF-M mount, and then I'm all set. And it's also a great feature when you go to sell this lens because you're not limited to buyers of a specific mount. And I was a little concerned about the stability of the mount because I haven't had a lot of interchangeable mount lenses, but it's extremely solid. The fit is perfect and there is no movement. Now you might have noticed that I have it mounted on an A7S III, which is a full frame sensor camera. That means that the image circle projected by this lens isn't large enough to cover the lens, and I have two options. One, either crop it in post, or two, use Sony's clear image zoom and set it to 1.4, which removes all of the vignetting. If I was using the A7 III, then I can just put it in APS-C mode, and again, I'd be all set. I really like using this lens with these two cameras because there's no optical image stabilization in the lens, and I can take advantage of the IBIS or in-body image stabilization in both of these. Sirui also makes a 50mm anamorphic lens, which I will compare in another video, but I like the additional width that I'm getting with this 35mm, and I hope that they do come out with an even wider version. It's a manual focus lens and the focus wheel is excellent. It's wide enough to make handling super easy. It's beautifully smooth and it has just the right amount of tension and dampening so that you can smoothly pull focus without feeling like you're fighting the lens. Now the aperture ring is manual and is declicked, of course, meaning that it can freely turn without settling into preset stops. It also requires more force to turn than the focus ring, which prevents it from accidentally shifting. I like that it's positioned far enough from the body, especially on something like the A7S III, where it's still comfortable to change. And again, that's important with a manual aperture lens because you can't use the controls on the camera. This lens has an aperture range of f1.8 to f16, 13 elements in 9 groups, and 10 iris blades, which give us nice ovular bokeh. The maximum aperture of f1.8 means that we're getting a lot of light onto the sensor, and it makes it a great option for low light. As a point of reference, almost every single video on this channel is shot at about 35 millimeters and at f1.8. It also helps achieve that nice shallow depth of field or that blurry background effect, but this is one area where I could see an opportunity for improvement. So the minimum focus distance on this lens is 85 centimeters or 33.5 inches, which makes it challenging to fill the frame with subjects that are close to the camera, and that would have given us even more separation from the background if we could do it. Now I say opportunity for improvement, and I want to add an asterisk there because that's just me always thinking of how any product could be improved. It's not really something that I expect from an anamorphic lens at this price point. Now, I don't know that there are other 35mm anamorphic lenses at this price point, but I'm sure I'm gonna get comments about the fact that 800 bucks is not inexpensive. But just as an example, the RE 35mm anamorphic is $50,000. Now, I know that we're not comparing apples to apples, but I want you to see that we're not even in the same ballpark. It's not like this lens is just a little bit less expensive than the other options. It's like a completely different game. Now, what I ended up doing is adding a couple of diopters, which reduce the minimum focus distance and allow me to get much closer to the subject. Now I have a +1, 2, 4, and even 10. It really depends on how much closer I want the subject to appear. Now, going back to shooting wide open at f1.8, like with any fast lens, if you plan on shooting outside in bright daylight, you'll want a variable ND filter to block off some of that light and allow you to easily achieve the proper exposure. I use the Polar Pro variable ND filters, and the 67mm version fits perfectly. And I like the fact that Sirui used the same thread size on the 50 and the 35 because the same filter fits both. If you want one filter to fit all of your lenses, you can pick up the 82mm version and then get some step-up rings to fit the various lens sizes. I have a dedicated video to variable ND filters and what they do and how they work. So if you're interested in learning more, check out the link up in the corner and in the description. And this brings me to build quality. This lens is beautifully made. It's solid metal. I don't see any plastic components. I already mentioned the outstanding focus and aperture rings and the sturdiness of the mount, but the rest of the lens is equally impressive. Sirui also included 2 follow focus rings that fit perfectly and save you from having to either cut your own or look for third-party options. All in all, I have nothing but good things to say about the build quality. I've had the lens for over a month, and I don't expect to have any issues with it. Now, before I move on to the image quality section, if you like what you've seen so far and have gotten value from this video, let me know by giving it a thumbs up. It helps the video and the channel, and it lets me know what kind of content you like so that I can make more of it. And if it's your first time here, hit the subscribe and notification buttons so you can stay up to date on all the latest gear and tutorials. As far as image quality, I'm very impressed with what this lens can capture. The footage is sharp. I'm getting what I was hoping to from an anamorphic lens, namely flares and oval-shaped bokeh. The flares are very pronounced with this lens and are on the blue side, which I happen to like. The lens itself is a little warm. It's not a super big deal for me because I end up using a lot of different lenses and each has a slightly different look, which I have to match in post regardless. The 33% compression or squeezing on the horizontal field of view means that what you see on the LCD of the camera will be slightly distorted unless you have a camera with a de-squeezing feature. The advantage of having a not too drastic a squeeze is that you can still easily compose your shots and use focus peaking. And this is something that becomes quite challenging with higher ratios like 1.8 and 2. And what I did was use one of my favorite accessories, the Atomos Ninja 5, which in fact does have a D-squeeze function, so I can preview and monitor a proper aspect ratio in real time. All right, so is the Sirui 35mm anamorphic lens worth 800 bucks? We're getting a solidly built lens with great ergonomics, good image quality, a more cinematic aspect ratio, and flares. Let's not forget the flares. So if you want that look, I think that it's an extremely reasonable price for a fast anamorphic lens. I'll put links in the description to where you can buy the Sirui 35mm and the 50mm, as well as some of the accessories that I mentioned in this video. I really hope I was able to give you a good overview of the Sirui 35 f1.8 anamorphic. If I did, please let me know by giving this video a thumbs up, tweet it, share it, and if you haven't yet, join the community by hitting the subscribe and notification buttons. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Tech Gear Talk. You know what I always say? Buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon. What's up guys, Sagi here, and I need to tuck my shirt in, so there.